Hello everyone, check out my new production quality. It's like I've still never done this before, but with a fancy new program. Anyway, it's your favorite spiffy man here, bringing you another episode of What the Fuck is Going On Around Here. The last couple of weeks have been an absolute shit show on the university and college scene, where people are trying to talk, but other people don't want them to. And my question is why? Why so much just bullshit over some people talking at colleges? Well, to investigate, I've enlisted an imaginary friend to utilize my new production values for more powerful shit posting. So on March 5th, popular YouTuber Sargon of Akkad and the president of the Rant Institute, Yaron Brook, were scheduled to discuss objectivism at Queen's College in London. And let's take a look at what happened. Reginald, roll that beautiful anti-fascist footage. Whew. Well, that was bracing. So, Antifa members in their trademark ninja masks just bust up in there, storm the stage, kind of attack people. I also read that they dropped some smoke bombs and injured 2 security guards outside the lecture hall. It's kind of fucked up, but why the violence? Like, my question is was the use of force necessary? Why do they do this? I mean, it's true that both men on the stage are vehemently anti-communist and anti-social justice, but to attack them because of the things they say seems a little bit extreme. To me, this just looked like a couple of dudes talking about some shit on a stage in front of a relatively small audience. Like, what's the problem? Why attack them? They don't seem to be hurting anyone or forcing anyone to do anything against their will. They don't appear to be silencing or disappearing people for presenting ideas that conflict with the mainstream acceptable narrative. You know, like the fascists tend to do. At any rate, Antifa technically won the battle, as the talk was shut down for security reasons. But they lost the war because the speakers and some of the audience members just found another venue where they were able to have their conversation uninterrupted. I just don't get why they felt it necessary to shut down the talk to begin with. Maybe we'll find out more from some of the other protests that happened this week. Dr. Jordan Peterson held a lecture at Queen's University on March 5th that was rabidly protested. This protest resulted in the destruction of property and at least one arrest that I'm aware of, but I'm not overly interested in the destructive nature of the protest. I want to know what motivates it. Why the hate for Peterson? You know, I get this. A lot of people don't like his ideas, but what warrants this level of furor? Well, I think I found a bit within this protest that can kind of point us in the right direction, friends. Hit it, Mick. Okay, a little more docile than the last one, you know, because people use actual words this time and weren't LARPing like they were Japanese assassins in feudal times. So let's look at 2 statements that were made by these protesters. 1, no freedom for hate speech, and 2, attending is complicity. These protesters appear to believe that Jordan Peterson is guilty of committing hate speech, and that any audience listening to what he has to say is complicit in propagating that hate speech. Now, I'm really familiar with Jordan Peterson and why he's in the spotlight and the things that he said, his ideology. But I do not believe that it's hateful. I think it comes from a different place. And my question is, if attending is complicity, how do you account for people who might vehemently disagree with Peterson, but hear him out anyway in an effort to kind of hone their mind with a myriad of opposing points of view? What about people in that audience who absolutely despise Peterson's ideas, but wish to improve their own arguments in debate, and therefore you have to learn the opposition's talking points to do that? If they never go to hear him speak, they won't have the opportunity to do that, to come up with better ideas than what they believe he has. It looks to me like these protesters feel that it is absolutely necessary to prevent Peterson's ideas from spreading to any audience. I mean, in their minds, it seems like he's guilty of wrongthink, and therefore he must be deplatformed, disavowed, defamed, and or disappeared. Like, that seems like something that they would approve of. But why? I mean, isn't it better to allow bad ideas to emerge and then strike them down with better ideas through argumentation? That's how things happen in intellectual discourse. Silencing people is how you get fucking resistance movements and shit. It's not how you change minds. Another protest occurred earlier this week where noted feminist Dr. Christina Hoff Sommers was deplatformed that might be able to shed a little bit of light on the question. Like I said, Sommers was shut down by the activists at Lewis and Clark Law School. Roll the tape. A little more personal, because these protesters strong-arm their way into the lecture hall. However, one thing that particularly interests me about the protest was the phrase, quote, "We choose to protest male supremacy, not give it a platform." Then they go on to say that, quote, "We believe our siblings and our comrades. Women are not liars with victim mentalities." End quote. Now, Christina Sommers is another person who I've looked at what she talks about, and she seems like one of these old school kind of feminists who believes in, quote, girl power in the Spice Girls sense rather than the, quote, male power idea in the postmodernist sense. But she's been branded a hate monger and a fascistic thinker because, she dares to say things like, I don't think due process should be subverted just because feminists say we should listen and believe rape victims, right? And I think that's a perfectly reasonable stance to maintain because due process is important. It's one of the fundamental parts of Western democracy. And I say that as somebody who has done a fair bit of activist work about, sexual assault and rapes on college campus. So, I can look at it and I can find nuance in it, and I can maybe come up with a compromise, right? But you never get that if you deplatform somebody. From what I understand, as the protest went on, Sommers was approached by the college diversity officer and was basically told that her lecture was over, do the Q&A, and then it was time to go. But to me, you look at the word comrade, you look at the deplatforming, and things are starting to come together a little bit on the front of why these protests take place, I think. Let's have a look at just one more clip to bring the whole thing home. James Damore, the Google memo guy, spoke on a panel at Portland State University a couple weeks ago, and an attempt to deplatform this talk was also made. They destroyed the sound equipment in the lecture hall. They continued to talk, they just kind of yelled, but I'm more interested in the protesters. Hit it.
You could be irritated by it. You could be irritated by the fact that women have to be the ones to gestate and lactate. You could be irritated by a lot of truths. But taking offense is a response that is rejection of reality. So men and women are different on height. They're different on muscle mass. They're different on where fat is deposited on our bodies, right? Our brains are also different. So there's some binaries.
Oh, wow. Security! This is what happens. Oh, did they shut off the volume? Can you hear? Can everybody hear?
Really? He's a piece of shit. That is not okay. Even the women in there have been brainwashed.
Should not listen to fascism. It should not be tolerated in civil society. Nazis are not welcome in civil society.
Fuck the police! Power to the people! Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna largely ignore the Nazi comment, the fascist comment. I mean, that's a whole other video for a whole other time. However, I would strongly encourage you all to just Google a picture of James Damore and tell me if this guy is seriously threatening to kick off the next global genocide, right? Like that, to me, if you call someone a Nazi who is not actually a Nazi, like, I just assume you're fucking moronic when it comes to social issues. Because you must have no other logical argument with which to refute a claim, and so you have to turn to the absolute worst character attack you can think of. But the problem is once you get to Nazi, you can't go any further than that. And people are brushing that off. Get some intellectual fucking fortitude and figure out an argument for your claim. Sorry. In my opinion, with this video, what's more interesting is how our little activist here claims that the women in that room have been brainwashed. I mean, how is their programming any better or worse than yours? Rather than destroy property, why not present an opposing and more convincing argument? You know? Ah, shit. Okay, that's right. We found out why. Power to the people with a fist in the air. Darling, you're a communist. In fact, all the protesters shown in this video seem to be communists, or at least have communist leanings. And one thing that I wanted to mention was that in the first video, Yaron Brook shouts from the stage, "The real fascists are here, the fascists are here." But I disagree with Brook on this. Fascism requires three major things that simply do not exist within the Antifa social justice radical ideology. You know, with fascism, first you need an autocracy to have fascism, like a governmental body that consists of one person, typically with a hereditary basis for leadership. You know, North Korea is a good example of this. Second, you need a dictatorial government. Again, North Korea is a good example of this. A single or small group of people who just write all the laws with no checks and balances. And third, you need an intense spirit of nationalism. And these groups seem to absolutely abhor nationalism. And I would implore you to look at all the flags in an Antifa rally and note that there are usually no American flags there at all. They seem to really hate America. And you might be asking yourself at this point, hey, Dick Smoke, it certainly seems like these people want to control ideas and shut them down with violence. Well, gentle soul, that's because they're communists. Communism is so similar to fascism in its implementation that it is easy to confuse the two. And this is because they both fall in the umbrella term of authoritarian. They're both authoritarian ideologies. The key difference is where fascism requires a strong autocratic dictator to determine acceptable social behavior, the communist ideal proposes the ultimate in state control by way of the collectivized control of the means of production. So effectively, communism replaces the dictator with, quote, the state, or really everyone in the collective of the state altogether. But both must control as much as they possibly can within the social landscape in order to remain in power, which is why they're nearly identical in implementation. Individuals who act in opposition to the ideological goals of either system must be silenced in some way, and history bears this out. Look to any implemented fascist regime throughout history, and you'll find people who get fucking disappeared for opposing the ideas. And, the flip is where most of your fascist states throughout history would just murder an opponent in the streets, the communists ship their asses off to gulags for re-education and to make the most out of a labor resource for the state if they didn't just kill them outright. I mean, to me, it's scary, because this is what we're headed for if we allow this type of behavior to continue and take hold of our country. And it really does scare the ever-living shit out of me. Free speech, no matter what idea they're spouting, is not hate speech. It's just speech. I get that hate speech is motivated in some way with some kind of disdain, but who gives a shit? Who gives a shit where it comes from? If it's a bad idea, it's a bad idea, and you should be able to call that out and present a better one. Just because you don't like racist things a neo-Nazi says, it doesn't give you the right to deplatform them or punch them in the face or fucking disappear them. I mean, however, if you think that this is acceptable behavior, then in my opinion, you are intensely, emotionally, and intellectually fucking weak. I mean, I think Nazi ideology is fucking ludicrous, but I can refute their ideas with better ideas. It's not fucking difficult to argue with these assholes and make them look stupid. Now, I'm not saying that any of the speakers at these protests were Nazis. They are not. If you believe that they are, I suggest you do research. And I'll pull one out of my ass that gets thrown at me all the time. Educate yourself. They are not Nazis. They're not even fascists. However, if you don't like their ideas, then provide better ones. Shutting them down only does two things. One, it draws more people to their side because humans love controversy and underdogs. And two, it makes you look like whiny, petulant children who are just throwing a tantrum because your feelings got hurt. The bottom line is that these motherfuckers at these protests need to toughen up, do their homework, and find holes in their reputations and provide better ideas. Anyway, that's all I have for this bullshit. As always, links to the videos are in the description. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe, upvote, downvote, share it with 10 million people, or just leave a comment down below, and I'll catch you beautiful fuckers in the next one.